there's something called the spoon theory. During the day, it takes you 2 spoons to get out of bed. It'll take you a spoon to make breakfast, 3 spoons to walk the dog, but you only have 12 spoons for the whole day.
Mhm.
So by, 8 a.m., you've used over half your spoons. So if we use this spoon theory and, we say your workout is going to cost you 2 spoons, where is that going to go? Do you want to use those spoons earlier in the day so that you know that you have them? Or do we need to schedule it on a different, like a lighter day where you have more spoon availability?
Abby, as a trainer, when someone with ADHD comes to you and they say that they've been to the gym multiple times, but they haven't gone back, so they've struggled, what's the one thing you tell them right now that they might not hear from other trainers?
I would say that they probably haven't found either the right system or the right type of workout that is meaningful to them that they want to stick with.
Okay, so let's dig into what do you mean by the right system?
Yeah, so a lot of times with neurodivergence and ADHD specifically, you need to find a system that is going to support your brain and your body in a way that works differently than it might work for someone who doesn't have ADHD. So, for example, someone with ADHD might need more accountability, more check ins. They might need notifications on their phone to remind them, oh, yeah, now's my time to go to the gym, or time blocking on their calendar. Or even something as simple as like gamifying a workout, making it fun, or just finding something that gives them that dopamine hit that makes them want to keep going back.
So, well, we're going to get a lot more into this, folks. But before we do, let's hear about your background. How'd you get into doing what you're doing today as a trainer?
Yeah, real quick. I was a three-sport athlete in high school, so soccer, dance team, and cross country. Knew what I wanted to do going into college, so was in the exercise science program when I went to school. And then right out of school, I went into corporate wellness. I did that for about 5 years, and now I've been on my own, owning my own personal training business for about 3 years, and have my own podcast through it too.
That's awesome. And the transition from the corporate position.
Yes. Yeah, they were making a move to a different building that didn't have a need for someone to run a fitness center at their facility. So yeah, my position was no longer needed. So thankfully I was able to find my own path after that. It was icky and it kind of hurt in the moment, but it all turned out the way it was supposed to after that.
I think it really just establishes your credibility for focusing in on people who are often underserved when we talk about exercise and training. I mean, if you do a search on YouTube or the internet, you don't really find a tremendous amount of practical things. So with that, for ADH people that you work with, not the philosophical, but what are some of the real practical things you do as you help them get back into fitness and structure their workouts?
Yeah. So each client, ADHD or not, but looking specifically at ADHD, needs something specific, which is going to be different from the next person who has ADHD a lot of times. So the things that I like to focus on are being that person to give them those check-ins, right? So on days that they have a scheduled workout, or so like let's say someone has a scheduled workout, I send them their workout, and on those days that I know that they need to be working out, I'm sending a check-in text saying, "Hey, what time are you working out today? Where does it fit in with your schedule?" So that they're accountable to me. They know when they do their workout, they can come to me and say, "Okay, my workout's done." We can check the box. I can celebrate with them. For other people, for my in-person clients, I show up at their door. So there's no excuse. They can't, decide that they want to do something else. I
I
show
guess
up
they could
and
not answer the door, but
which they won't do. I've never had anyone not answer the door. So I know it's a tactic that works. If I'm going to them, they're going to do it whether they want to or not. So, creating an environment that is really enjoyable for them to want to work out, picking exercises that they like doing, avoiding exercises that they hate doing, because there's always something else that we can do. We don't have to do burpees. Everybody hates burpees. We don't have to do burpees. So it's really just about creating that enjoyment that's going to keep someone consistently coming back and wanting to do it.
isn't that some of those things are kind of true with anyone though, right?
That's very true. Yeah, absolutely. But there are a lot of people who I think don't need like the accountability and the check-ins. And we see a lot of times people will go through their workout program, but then they kind of fall off at the end. So I would say that they would need even something similar to the accountability, the someone showing up who's going to hold them, hold them accountable. But we also see a lot of times to make it like more enjoyable, especially for the ADHD brain, which can, want to be working on a lot of different things or focus on something that's not exercise. We want to make it something that they do want to focus on. So that's where, kind of like I talked about at the top of the show, we can gamify it. So we can make it, we can have a reward set for the end of a certain time period where they can reward themselves with something that they really like. Maybe it's a game, maybe it's a new pair of shoes. Again, finding those ways to find those dopamine hits, which I think people who don't have ADHD also need to do, but maybe a little bit less so than we think.
Mhm. And I just don't have real deep understanding of ADHD, although I probably have it to a certain degree, and we talked about that last time. But it's not just as simple as inability or shorter attention span, inability to hold your attention, right? So you mentioned dopamine hence hits and other things that feel like rewards to keeping people sort of focused. I don't know if I'm reading that right or not.
Yes, you are. And I think a lot of times too with clients who are neurodivergent, sometimes like the executive function, meaning what the capacity that your brain has to do all of the things that you want to do can be a little bit more limited. It can be a little bit more stretched thin depending on how taxing the day was on your brain. So it's really, I think, being a little bit more careful about how you approach your whole schedule, whether that means, moving a workout to another day if you're out of executive function. There's something called the spoon theory, meaning like during the day, it takes you 2 spoons to get out of bed. It'll take you a spoon to make breakfast, 3 spoons to walk the dog, but you only have 12 spoons for the whole day. So by, 8 a.m., you've used over half your spoons. So if we use this spoon theory and, we say your workout is going to cost you 2 spoons, where is that going to go? Do you want to use those spoons earlier in the day so that you know that you have them? Or do we need to schedule it on a different, like a lighter day where you have more spoon availability? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think about it as like your brain processing energy.
Hmm.
And I guess that kind of correlates to the spoon theory.
For sure.
I wonder if exercise in and of itself helps to regenerate the pool of energy or the resources. Does that help?
Yeah, it absolutely can. And I see that a lot of times where someone will be really exhausted or they'll be, in a doom scroll on their phone and they're like, I really need to get to the gym. And they'll tell me that. And I'm like, great. Just so you know, when you go to the gym, you're going to feel a lot better and you're probably going to be more productive. But at the end of it, and so sure enough, they go to the gym, they do their workout, and they're like, you know what? I do feel a lot better. I feel like I can do a couple more things. So I think it does help.
That's cool. So, and then as you watch those you are coaching, I'll call it coaching, through the process, are there signals or cues that that you pick up on when there's a drift, or do you give them variety, or I'm just kind of curious how you watch. I'm thinking my coaching background and kind of the deep listening that we're trained to use, and wondering if there's sort of a deep observational aspect to being a good trainer for AD.
There absolutely is. And I've seen this, over the past 3 years. And I can give you a couple of really good examples. So I like to schedule the way that I plan out my clients' workouts is we do about 12 weeks at a time. So about 3 months, where you'll do the same exercises for 3 months, progressing hopefully in weight and making little adjustments as we need to. But I've found that about after 12 weeks is when the brain starts to get bored. And that's when it starts to want something else. So then, usually around then, it's funny. It's happened a couple times where I've had a client say, "Hey, I'm kind of getting bored with this workout," and it's a week away from when I'm going to change the workout anyways. So we're right around that 12-week point. So about every 12 weeks is good to change it up. But I'm also so flexible. So if one of my clients, for example, one of my clients who I see in person, they'll say, I really like this. This has been great, but I need something else. I need something that's going to keep it fresh and new for me. We need to find that novelty. And so I'm for sure happy to change it to something else because it's easy to change the exercises into something that feels harder, feels more fun, feels interesting, throwing in some, wild variation of something that makes them feel different in a good way. So, yeah, I absolutely see that all the time.
That's cool. So the other thing I just it came to mind is obviously you're in the Tampa area,
Mhm.
right? So if someone's watching and they're going, "Oh gosh, I wish I could work with Abby, but I live in California or I live in New Jersey or wherever it may be." What would be some things that you would suggest to them if they're looking for a good trainer for them that they would look for?
Yeah. So you want to find someone who's willing to work with you, no matter what your body or brain is feeling that day. Because if you go to a trainer and they're going to give you the exact same workout that they've been giving you and you're just not feeling it, you want that trainer to be able to pivot and say, okay, today seems like you have a little bit less energy. We can take it down a notch. We can maybe do some stretching instead, something that's still going to feel good for your body, but continue the consistency of you coming here and seeing me and continuing with your motivation to work out and make a change. So sometimes I've seen trainers who will say, "Too bad, it's either you do this workout or you can go home." There's no middle ground, and there should be because sometimes the brain and the body just don't want to do exactly what you ask of it, and that's okay. So finding someone who's going to listen and be flexible.
Awesome. Do you do remote sessions? I'm just kind of curious.
Yes, I sure do. I do remote sessions. So I'm in Tampa, Florida, but I've had a client in Arkansas. So, I can do anything like that. And I also do a monthly membership that if you feel like you don't need, me to be right in front of you to watch you do your workouts, you're comfortable exercising, you just don't know what to do. I also have a monthly membership where you get your workouts sent to you through an app. And then I still check in with you over text and make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do.
That's cool. There's another thing I kind of teased it earlier that's been in the news recently, and it's not so much specifically to ADHD, but I think it's fascinating. And that is, everyone's going crazy with the GLP-1 agonists right now,
Hmm.
the Ozempic and Wegovy and those kinds of things. But there was a recent study come out from the Endocrine Society. They did a presentation at their annual meeting, and they found out that people who are losing weight on some of these peptides, they actually are exercising. If they typically were going on walks and counting their steps, as an example, they would be 560 fewer steps per day than they would be before. And I think we touched on this first episode too, is these drugs, they not only it isn't just cutting back your desire for satiation with food, but it's everything.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like it cuts back on your ability to really stretch yourself and to hold to some plan or some goal that you have. And so I'm just kind of curious what your take is on that, because I'm sure you have clients that are working both the exercise angle and also trying to reduce their weight. They might, need some additional help. Maybe they are type 2 diabetics or on the borderline. So I think I sent you some information ahead of time of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do find that the GLP-1s, they do zap your energy, and I can tell you exactly why. Because your body's used to running on a certain number of calories for your brain to function, your body to function, for you to feel like you're having a normal day. So when you get on the GLP-1s, it's an appetite suppressant, so you end up eating less calories, which is good for your weight if we've talked about this in the last episode, if you fall within the correct BMI of needing that extra tool. There are some people with a lower BMI that are using it, and I don't know that that's exactly right. But if you do fall into the correct category, insurance is going to cover it. It makes sense for you, especially with that food noise and all that stuff. You'll see a reduction in weight, but you'll probably also see a little bit of that energy zap because your body just doesn't have as many calories to work with. That doesn't mean that, the clients that I've worked with who have been on GLP-1s, we've had to modify a little bit, especially at the beginning. It's that kind of like learning curve of how's your body reacting with it. And sometimes the workouts, they weren't what they were before starting the GLP-1s. And that's okay as long as you're still moving, because the important thing is we still we still have those workouts. We're still building muscle, maintaining your muscle while you're losing that weight, because in the numbers, the studies that I've seen, if you're not strength training, but you're on GLP-1s, you're losing a lot of muscle mass. And yeah, that's a part of the weight that you want to lose, but you'd rather it be fat than muscle mass. So that's where the importance of really the strength training comes up. But I think that's probably why we see a little bit less as far as steps. You see more brain fog. Like your body just doesn't have enough to pull from.
Yeah, I didn't think about just the calorie model, but yeah, that's probably the bigger driver is just they just don't have the juice.
Hmm.
But I think that, I think it was on a Huberman podcast too. I think that came up that just that drive is suppressed, that GLP-1 has other impacts other than just satiation, cutting back on the satiation for.
Yeah, it very well might be. I think there's also a lot that we don't know yet about GLP-1s. So there could very well be, something underlying that's, taking that drive. It has to do, I would assume, something physiologically that's reducing it, but I don't know the exact thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was a byproduct.
Yeah, so I think I read that, as you mentioned, strength training, also hydration,
Mhm.
and also protein intake are real important as well.
Yes, and fiber. Fiber is another
And
big
fibers.
one. The protein
Okay.
and the fiber together. Um, it's something actually that I've learned over the years of being a trainer. Is I was telling all my clients, you need to make sure that you're getting your protein in, because that's what helps keep you feeling full. It's what helps you build muscle. But, over the past couple of years, I realized, like, well, if you're going to have that much protein, you also need fiber so that you can process it. Your body can, get it through your body, get it where it needs to be. We can't also avoid the fiber too. So on GLP-1s, protein and fiber are two very important things, along with
Point.
the hydration that you mentioned.
Yeah, fiber too, because you got to keep the bugs in your gut happy,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. And if you are doing a lot of protein, definitely need their cooperation and
For
helping
sure.
break down the proteins for sure. Oh my goodness. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about this whole entrepreneurial shift you went into, because, went from being, one thing nice about the corporate job is I experience and had benefit from for many years was having, the health plan, and it really is great. Being an entrepreneur like you are and working for yourself has wonderful freedom to it. But those early days can be a challenge sometimes. And just wanted to talk about that transition. We talked a little bit about it, but I'm curious about how you did with it, what the different components of being successful are. You had the knowledge, and you had the background and the education to do what you're doing. But there's all this other stuff you have to do too, because when you're a solo entrepreneur, you're wearing all the hats. You're
Yeah.
the CFO, you're you're the chief marketing officer, all those things. So share with us what that transition was like for you.
Yeah, it's so funny that you bring that up, because I was talking to someone recently and I said, I went to school for exercise science. I know the body really well, but I don't know sales and I don't know how to run a business. And, that would have been really helpful if we had a class like that in college, because college was setting people like me up to go into physical therapy, into working in a gym. It didn't set us up for being our own bosses. So, there's things that we learned in high school, personal finance, things like that. But it would have been nice, hindsight 2020, to have a class on how to be a business owner. So it's a really tough transition, especially at the beginning. I was definitely more in a scarcity mindset and saying yes to everything that I could get my hands on. I was saying yes to people who were many miles away from me and doing a very long drive. So because that was all that I had. 3 years later, I think I'm coming from a more abundance mindset of, even if the money isn't exactly what I want, I would still like my sanity and my mental health to be okay. So saying no to things that are well outside of my range of being willing to sit in Tampa traffic, which is,
Oh,
horrible.
yeah.
or, just things that I feel like just aren't in alignment. I'm not scared of hopping on a consultation now and having the clients and having the person on the other end say, "I don't know if this is a good fit," because I want them to feel like it's a good fit. I don't want to force something. If a client leaves for whatever reason, I'm okay with it because the alignment wasn't there. So where I am now is a lot more comfortable. My business has grown because I've worked with more people. There's more referrals than there were when I started. So but at the beginning it was very tough. It was the very like grind, hustle mindset of just, yeah, doing everything that I could. But that's definitely changed now, which I'm happy about.
Usually, when you launch something like that, you just have to have in the back of your mind, you need to expect that it'll take a couple years before it starts to feel like it's comfortable. The
Yeah.
first few years are like very scrappy and doing whatever you can just
Yeah.
to keep going.
It
So,
still feels scrappy, Joe, I'll tell you that. Like, I'm still trying to figure out, like, I finally, thanks to my accountant, am moving over to QuickBooks instead of
y-
my ugly Excel spreadsheet where I'm tracking all my expenses, so she's happy about that, but
yeah,
it's all these little things that they all just add up, and you're trying to figure out social media, trying to figure out SEO and marketing, and like you said, we're wearing all the hats, and it is tough.
right, exactly. But I think there's another piece to this that I just wanted to tease out. First of all, I commend you for making this shift and for staying with it. Obviously, it's connected with what you're very passionate about
Mhm.
and what you're gifted in, what you have knowledge, but sometimes just having knowledge isn't enough. There has to be this intersection between your passion, your knowledge, your experience, and your I call it your gifting. You got to be wired the right way to be doing what you're doing. So again, I commend you for that. But moving forward, and in recent months, you've been like podcasting, like you've been guesting quite a bit. You've been asked to be on, so the momentum people are finding you, which is great. But you have your own podcast too, right?
Yes.
You want to talk about that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And that has transitioned actually, because I just hit my 2-year anniversary of my podcast is called Talk Your Abs Off, a fitness podcast where we
I
talk
don't think it
about.
has not worked for me.
Well, I know, I know. All we
I
do is
love
talk
it.
on these podcasts, and where are the abs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's transitioned a bit. When I first started the podcast, it was all about helping people find the one or two sustainable things that they could add into their lives to help make it just a little bit healthier, whether it's eating different foods for a healthy gut, just like we talked about, or how to start running, how to find the right shoes, how to start a program like that. And now it's shifted a little bit more into the clientele that I work with, which are people who are neurodivergent, with people who have hypermobility or have chronic conditions, because I found through my work that those three things often intertwine. And we talked about this is a very, underrepresented group of people in the fitness industry, and fitness doesn't necessarily cater well to them. So that's kind of more what I'm focusing on. It's the conversations I enjoy. How are we managing chronic illness in a way that honors our bodies? How are we, working around neurodivergence in a way that works with our brains so that we can continue to do the things that we love and still be healthy. So it still pairs a little bit with things that the everyday person can take away with them, but it also focuses in more on the clients that I work with and what I want them to take away.
So cool. So, and like I said, you've been getting around. So,
I've been trying. I've been working hard, Joe.
no, that's great. You've been guesting a lot. I've thought of it too. I think it's well, first of all, there's the whole fulfillment thing.
Hmm.
Being on your own and having your own business, doing what you love to do. I mean, we don't talk about that enough. I think, people tend to want to take the safe route, and sometimes they struggle with the position or the job they're in because it's not quite right, or there's many different factors, but they feel they have to hang in there. And yes, that's the safest course of action, but at least explore. Um, So before you made the shift into having your own business, did you network with other people who were doing it?
So before I started my business, I never thought that I wanted to start my own business. I was actually adamantly against starting my own business because I loved what I was doing in corporate
Right.
wellness. It was still in corporate, but I was doing what I loved. I had a steady paycheck. And when I talk to people who are trying to start as personal trainers to work for themselves, they say, "All right, what do I have to do? How did you do it?" I say, "I'm not a very good example because when I left corporate wellness, I had clients already and I left and they followed me. They
They
came
came
with
with
me.
you.
So I didn't start from scratch, which a lot of times
Smart.
people have to do. So, I never think that I'm a very good example for starting from scratch, but I also hadn't networked with anyone before starting my business. I kind of just said, all right, heck with it, let's just do it. But then I did join networking groups where I found other female entrepreneurs um, who I could relate with and, talk through the same struggles, and that was very helpful.
Cool. That's cool. Are there things that you are incorporating into your exercise program, either equipment or new approaches that you're excited about? Now, I'm throwing you a curveball.
I I'm here for the curveball. I honestly, I give myself a little bit more grace than I used to because I tell my clients all day every day, if you can't get to the gym, it's okay. You're going to be okay. Missing one day won't derail the whole train. And myself, if I missed a day, I'm like, "Oh, crap, I'm off the rails. I gotta get back on." But realistically, finding something that works with your life, I've added running back in again. I was a runner, took a nice little hiatus after my marathon because that was a lot of running and I needed a break. So I've started to add that back in for enjoyment. I pair my cardio, so running, with watching a show that I wanna watch so that I'm not sitting on the couch watching it. I have to actively be doing something. That's my motivation for doing my cardio. So I've added in some running, but also giving myself grace on the days when my body hurts, when, my shoulder, last time we talked about my shoulder injury, I'm still working on that. So there's still a lot of things that I can't do, but finding the things that I can do, which is what I preach all day to my clients.
That's cool. I want to swing back to something you said a few minutes ago. And the way I would word it would be doing the small things that you know you can do right now. And it reminded me of a podcast I was watching. It was a Navy SEAL, Andy Stumpf. He makes a decision to always take the harder path. If there's a choice between taking the elevator, take the stairs, right? And so usually he says these things compound. And so even though it may not seem like it's a huge thing, you know, taking the small incremental steps in the right direction, they compound and they actually help you both build momentum. We know that small habits stacking like that also reinforce and help motivate you as well. I just want to know what you thought of that.
Yeah, it's actually that's a very interesting thing, and for the people that I work with, I would disagree with what he's saying
Okay.
because sometimes those things seem too hard, even for someone who's just starting out in their fitness journey. If something seems too hard, you're not gonna do it, and that's just the reality of it. So if we can take an easier, more consistent way to keep you continuing to do something instead of trying to do something hard and then thinking this is too hard and then doing nothing, I'd rather you doing something.
Yeah. That's a good clarification there because I think the implication might have sounded like doing something very hard, but going back to my own scientist roots, we talked about this last time, being an analytical chemist to start with. There's a certain level of activation energy that's required for a reaction to go, but you want to keep that level small enough so the reaction you need small activation.
Yes.
And so what I'm doing now as an older guy, I'm using a standing desk, right?
Amazing.
So,
Love that.
here. And honestly, it doesn't seem like much, but by the end of the day, if I'm, working here doing my business stuff, I put 2 or 3 hours in standing, I can feel it,
Yeah.
you
It
know?
makes a big difference.
Right. So that's a small thing.
Yeah.
It's a small thing.
Well, and I think too when someone we wanna capitalize on someone's excitement to start something. So, that can be maybe the bigger thing, the bigger reaction, let's say, of getting someone into fitness. So, they're excited, they wanna change their body, they wanna change their health, they're excited, great. So, for the first month or 2, that's where we see a lot of progress, but then it starts to get boring and that's when it falls off. So, that's where we take those smaller sustainable things, those smaller reactions to keep them going instead of trying to make them do something even harder. So, yeah, I think you make a very good point of, we still need that big reaction, that big thing at the beginning, but that's not going to sustain us forever. So that's where I think the little choices like your standing desk or a walking
Well,
pad can make a difference.
we haven't talked about this, but I think it's relevant. I mean, most of the work you're doing is individual, one on one, but sometimes people, it may help to do things socially.
Mhm. Yes.
Spin classes used to be the big thing. I don't know if they still have them.
They still have spin classes. They're very fun now. They turn off the lights. They've got bright neon lights. They've got loud music. It's a blast. But I actually do teach group classes as well. So I'm a group exercise instructor on top of everything else. And on one of my podcast episodes, I just talked to someone about why people are continuing to come to these classes, and it's for the community. It's for the social aspect of it, along with feeling good. But they know they're not going to do it on their own. But they want to see their friends, and they want to be told what to do. So a group class is a really great environment for that.
Yeah. So you're doing that. Is that a class through your community platform or is it separate?
No, those are separate. So I'm employed privately by a company, and so I teach for them exclusively. I mean, I'll teach
Mhm.
for whoever wants me to
Right.
teach. I work for a couple different companies right now, but yeah, it's
You are
even
scrappy.
what was that?
You are scrappy.
I know. Listen, I still get all around all the places, but it's what I enjoy doing. It breaks up the day. My one on
Yeah,
ones in my groups. It's a blast.
yeah, that's cool. I wanted to ask you, what do you recommend for people who are older, like me, getting really, to be honest with you, I lost a lot of weight years ago, probably 10 years ago, by doing intermittent fasting. I lost 50 pounds and I've kept that off, believe it or not. I still
Amazing.
do time restricted eating. I
Mhm.
feel the muscle loss. And so, what would you recommend for older folks to get themselves back into shape? Walking, I don't know. But I think
Yeah.
the muscle training, the strength training is the one that I'm, as I go back to the gym, I'm thinking, if I go back in there thinking about what I could lift 25 years ago, I'm going to be going to the doctor after that.
Right. So, okay, my biggest thing is strength training. That's what I do. It's my biggest the biggest thing that I want people to know as they get older is you need to continue to strength train, which is different than working in your garden. It's different than taking a walk. All of those things are great. I think walking is a wonderful benefit for everyone, but strength training, especially when we talk about muscle reduction as you get older, as well as osteoporosis and osteopenia, we want strong bones and we want strong muscles to support those bones so that, if we fall, we can catch ourselves. If we fall, we don't break something. So going back into the gym, correct, you can't lift what you lifted 25 years ago yet. I do see people online, social media, you can see all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I'll see people in their 80s who are still deadlifting or squatting, but they didn't start there, right? They started lifting the fives and tens and taking it slow and listening to their body. Most important thing. But it's also good to progress. You can't stay at those fives and tens forever. You want to continue to get stronger and you can still build muscle, making sure that you're eating enough, all the things. But making sure that we're incorporating the strength training is the most important thing that someone who's aging can do.
What do you think about creatine?
I think it's beneficial for some people. There's a lot of studies done. The only study that I've actually looked at is the one in regards to assisting with like depression. It can, according to this study, reduce like depression symptoms if you take it consistently in small doses. One of my clients had looked into it to see if it helps with ADHD focus actually. So I think that creatine, it's very important with creatine that you are lifting weights, that you're exercising, and that you're drinking enough water. Because personal story, I took creatine a couple of times, and if you don't drink enough water, like your stomach hurts. It is not comfortable. So making sure that you're very hydrated. I would say creatine is something that it's not the end all be all. You gotta start lifting the weights first. If you talk to your doctor and you find that creatine is a good addition to it, then more power to you, but it's not necessary for starting.
Yeah. I mean, I would never have brought it up, some of my age in particular, what was it, back in the late 90s or something, where it was surging, mostly around bodybuilders, right?
Yeah.
But I think there has been some studies talking about creatine in the brain,
Yep.
helping brain
Mhm.
fog, maybe helping memory, and a lot of other benefits as well. But so I'm just kind of curious to see what you
Yeah.
said about that.
Food for thought, right? I would say
Yeah.
do your own research and talk
Yep.
to your doctor. Those are 2 very good
Absolutely.
places to start with creatine.
All right. Disclaimer.
Yeah,
This is not medical advice. All right.
exactly.
Let's see. What things do you think are important when it comes to fitness that aren't talked about often enough? I'm sure we've touched on some of them. Feel free to underscore if that makes sense.
Some things in fitness that are often, like, neglected, not talked about, that you don't need to go hard every single time that you go to the gym. Like, you might go to the gym and see the people who are, bench pressing 200 pounds, squatting 400 pounds, doing all the things. What you need to know is they're probably not doing that every day. In fact, they shouldn't be doing that every day. There are periods of rest that need to happen in order to still see growth. We call them deload weeks. So, giving your body a chance to decrease the loads that you're lifting and giving yourself a break. I think a lot of times with fitness, it's people just always it's like entrepreneurship. People think it's a grind and you always have to be going, lifting heavier, doing all the things, when in reality the rest is just as important so that your body can recover and continue to grow in the ways that you want to see muscle growth, reducing stress levels, all those things. So it's more than just going to the gym and doing, an hour or two of really heavy lifting. So I think that's a really big thing is we have a misconception of what fitness needs to look like. It doesn't need to be an hour or 2 in the gym. It can be 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, you made me think also, great points. You made me think too that when I lost that weight, taking that intermittent fasting approach, I had to sort of reframe myself to think about the way I was going to eat for the rest of my life versus the whole diet as somewhat like a project kind of thing. Well, once I get there, then I'll be at that point forever, no matter what, right? Because I've hit that goal. And we have so many things that are that way today. I'm going to go do this and then I'll have it. Maybe exercise, same thing. It's a lifestyle. And so
Absolutely.
there isn't as, if you have that long range arc, that long range point of view, and identity is I'm someone who takes care of my body through exercise, among other things, eating well. If you have an off day, that's okay. You listen to your body, like you said, and you don't have all the shame because you didn't, hit it hard that day because you know
Exactly.
there'll be tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, but it's not letting the, "Okay, I missed 1 day," turn into, "All right, now I've missed 2 weeks." Right?
So
So
I
there's
guess
a
I'm done.
balance. What was that?
So I guess I'm done.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So finding that balance for sure. And also, yeah, once people reach their goals, I think it's fairly well known that it's easier when someone is first starting out to like lose all that weight. But then we get to the last like 10 to 20 pounds where your body's really comfortable. And that's where it gets really hard and where people start to see the scale. If you're watching the scale, you start to see it plateau and it gets really hard and you have to change up how you're training because your body, it just needs something, a different kind of stimulus to really push through that last little bit, whether it's changing eating, lifting differently, doing more high intensity stuff, whatever that is. So yeah, I think it's, and then once you can maintain it, you have to do a lot to maintain it, right? You have to
Mhm.
keep up either the same eating or the same workouts, and it can be exhausting. It can be tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, it's been a pleasure having you back on, and this time we actually get to see you. So
I know, this is lovely.
we had technical problems last time, but I'm so glad you agreed to come back on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure talking to you. This is always
Yeah.
such a good conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. So listen, everyone. Well, first of all, Abby, how do people reach you? Maybe they want to get a remote class, or maybe they live in the Tampa Bay area and they want to connect with you.
Yeah, for sure. So all my social media, I'm Coach Abby Clapper on Instagram and Facebook. And then my website is endorphin, ENDORFIN, wellness.com. And if you want to check out my podcast, Talk Your Abs Off, and that's where you can find me.
Okay, everybody, let's be healthy. Abby has inspired us. Thank you, Ivy.
Thank
Great
you.
having you back on. Hey, thanks for joining me today on Titans of Transition. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please check the show notes for additional information.